Welcome to the Spiritual Awakening Path. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're diving into a powerful topic. 9 powerful signs you're about to experience a final spiritual awakening. If you've been feeling shifts in your energy, questioning old beliefs, or sensing that something big is about to happen in your life, this video is for you. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll know whether the universe is guiding you toward that ultimate breakthrough in your awakening journey. Have you ever looked back at your life and realized that the people who once meant the world to you slowly faded from your journey? Maybe it was a best friend who stood by you for decades, a coworker who felt like family, or even a relative you thought would never drift away. Then one day you notice the calls come less often, the conversations feel shorter, and the invisible distance keeps growing wider. I've sat with many patients and students during therapy and spiritual sharing sessions, and one of the most common whispered questions I hear, often with a trembling voice, is this: what did I do wrong? Why did the people I love leave me? If you've ever asked yourself the same question, I want you to take a deep breath and listen with your heart. What you're experiencing is not a failure in your relationships. It is not your fault. It's a natural process of spiritual growth. You see, in energy psychology, we often talk about frequency alignment. When your soul shifts, when your frequency rises, people who no longer resonate with that new frequency will naturally drift away. Not because they're bad, not because you're better, but simply because the two melodies no longer harmonize in the same song. Think of it this way. Imagine yourself as a radio. When you adjust the dial from 90.5 to 101.7, you can't hear the old station anymore. That station still exists, but it's no longer broadcasting on the frequency you're tuned into. Life works the same way. Some people step into your life to teach you lessons, to walk beside you for a season, and when that soul contract is complete, the universe gently moves them aside to make space for new, deeper, more aligned connections. I remember a woman, about 55 years old, who came to me in near despair. She told me that her group of friends, people she had been close to for over 20 years, suddenly felt distant. Their conversations had become shallow, revolving around shopping, gossip, and surface-level things. She felt misplaced, like she no longer belonged. Instead of giving her the usual comfort of, "Don't worry, it will be okay," I told her something harder to hear. Maybe you're outgrowing them, not in age, but in soul. And interestingly, just a few months later, she joined a local meditation group. There she met new people, people who shared her hunger for stillness, meaning, and deeper questions about life. She told me, with tears in her eyes, that for the first time in years, she finally felt seen. And she realized the so-called loss wasn't a loss at all. It was preparation for a higher connection. Do you see? When one door closes, it often makes space for another to open. But in the silence between those doors, we feel pain, emptiness, and loneliness. If you're standing in that silence right now, I want you to trust. The universe has not abandoned you. You're being prepared. The people who leave don't vanish from your heart. They simply completed their role in your journey. So let me ask you, can you release those old relationships, not in anger, but in gratitude? Grateful that they once walked beside you. Grateful that they helped shape the person you are today. On the path of spiritual awakening, we learn not to cling. We learn to trust that anyone who leaves carries this message: I've completed my part in your story. And anyone who arrives carries a new reminder: you're ready for the next chapter. So if you find yourself losing people who once felt close, don't see it as abandonment. See it as elevation. You are being guided toward your true soul family. And I promise you, these new connections will not just walk with you, they will uplift your spirit in ways you never imagined. Have you ever looked back at your life and realized that the people who once meant the world to you slowly faded from your journey? Maybe it was a best friend who stood by you for decades, a coworker who felt like family, or even a relative you thought would never drift away. Then one day you notice the calls come less often, the conversations feel shorter, and the invisible distance keeps growing wider. I've sat with many patients and students during therapy and spiritual sharing sessions, and one of the most common, whispered questions I hear, often with a trembling voice, is this: what did I do wrong? Why did the people I love leave me? If you've ever asked yourself the same question, I want you to take a deep breath and listen with your heart. What you're experiencing is not a failure in your relationships. It is not your fault. It's a natural process of spiritual growth. You see, in energy psychology, we often talk about frequency alignment. When your soul shifts, when your frequency rises, people who no longer resonate with that new frequency will naturally drift away. Not because they're bad, not because you're better, but simply because the two melodies no longer harmonize in the same song. Think of it this way. Imagine yourself as a radio. When you adjust the dial from 90.5 to 101.7, you can't hear the old station anymore. That station still exists, but it's no longer broadcasting on the frequency you're tuned into. Life works the same way. Some people step into your life to teach you lessons, to walk beside you for a season, and when that soul contract is complete, the universe gently moves them aside to make space for new, deeper, more aligned connections. I remember a woman, about 55 years old, who came to me in near despair. She told me that her group of friends, people she had been close to for over 20 years, suddenly felt distant. Their conversations had become shallow, revolving around shopping, gossip, and surface-level things. She felt misplaced, like she no longer belonged. Instead of giving her the usual comfort of, "Don't worry, it will be okay," I told her something harder to hear. Maybe you're outgrowing them, not in age, but in soul. Have you ever woken up in the morning, and from the very first moment, your body feels heavy, strange, almost as if it no longer belongs to you? Maybe it's a vague ache in your shoulder. Maybe it's an invisible pressure in your chest. Or maybe it's that lingering fatigue that clings to you, even after a full night's sleep. Most people in midlife or later immediately think, "I'm just getting older. My body's wearing down." But I want you to pause for a moment and look at it from another perspective. What if this isn't a decline? What if this is an upgrade? In my work with students of all ages, I've noticed the same pattern. As people get closer to a spiritual awakening, their bodies start to rebel. Not rebelling against them, but against everything that no longer fits the journey ahead. I call this stage cellular purification. Let me share a story. A man in his early 60s came to me, worried about constant indigestion, bloating, and body aches. He had been to several doctors, run multiple tests, and nothing serious came up. The doctors told him it's probably stress, maybe just age. But deep down, he knew something else was going on. During our conversations, we discovered a pattern. His symptoms would flare up every time he went to the office. This was a company he had worked at for over 30 years, yet for a long time it had brought him no joy. Just thinking about those meaningless meetings would tighten his chest. Being around certain negative coworkers would trigger headaches. Do you see what's happening here? The body has its own kind of wisdom. It doesn't speak in human words, but it knows how to scream in signals. Pain, fatigue, tension, imbalance. That's its way of saying, this is no longer right for you. Just as your body rejects a food it's allergic to, it can also reject an old lifestyle, a toxic environment, or outdated habits. Modern neuroscience gives us another lens on this. Research shows that whenever we go through deep psychological and spiritual changes, our brain cells form new connections while breaking down old ones. The body isn't merely suffering change, it's actively reprogramming itself to align with a new version of you. And during that reprogramming, fatigue, body aches, or sleep disruptions are completely natural. Think of it like this: a snake shedding its skin. During the process, the snake looks fragile, restless, vulnerable. It often hides away, staying quiet until the shedding is complete. But once the old layer is gone, it emerges shining, renewed, and far more flexible. That's what your body is doing right now. It's not breaking down, it's transforming. So what can you do when your body begins rejecting your old life? First, listen. Don't just silence the signals with painkillers or another cup of coffee so you can push through the same old routine. Ask yourself, what environment is making my body so tense? Which relationship makes my heart feel heavy? The answers will begin to reveal themselves. I often tell my students, treat your body like a sacred instrument. When an instrument falls out of tune, you don't throw it away. You adjust it, care for it, give it time to rest. Do the same for yourself. Drink more water, choose cleaner foods, rest when you need to, and most importantly, distance yourself from spaces and people that drain your energy. You may be surprised how quickly your body responds to even small shifts, because it's not fighting against you, it's fighting for you. It's leading you out of an outdated version of life, guiding you into the new one. So if your body suddenly feels difficult or strange, don't panic. See it as a sacred signal. It's a reminder that you are stepping into a new chapter of your spiritual journey, one where every cell in your body is restructuring to sync with your soul. And believe me, once this storm passes, you'll feel healthier, clearer, and freer than ever before. Have you ever felt, deep inside, that you were born for more than just getting through the days? That there's a bigger reason, a sacred purpose, even if you can't quite name it yet. But you know, without a doubt, it's there, waiting for you to discover it. Many people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s have shared with me this strange yet powerful feeling. What once mattered, status, money, approval from others, suddenly feels empty. Instead, their hearts begin to hear a whisper, a quiet calling that says, you were born to do something greater, something meaningful. Picture this. You're standing in a dark room with only a single candle flickering. That candle is your intuition. It doesn't light up the entire room, but it shines just enough for you to sense that there's a door somewhere. You may not see the full path, but you know you're being guided toward it. I once worked with a woman in her late 50s. She had spent her whole life devoted to her family and career, but lately she felt an aching emptiness inside. One day, while meditating, she broke down in tears without knowing why. Then she said to me, I know I'm meant to help other women who are suffering, like I once did. I don't know how yet, but I know it's my mission. From that moment on, she began studying spiritual healing, joined community groups, and slowly she found a new joy and fulfillment she had never known before. Often, your life purpose doesn't appear in full clarity right away. It's more like a seed planted in your heart long ago, and when you step onto the path of spiritual awakening, that seed begins to sprout. At first, it may feel like nothing more than a faint nudge, a vague intuition. But if you nurture it, with listening, with trust, it grows into something strong and undeniable. The most important part of this stage is learning to let go of the ego. Ego always craves certainty, control, and a clear plan. Ego demands, what is my mission? When will it happen? How will it look? But the soul whispers, trust. The path will unfold. And when you lean into that trust, you'll notice that step by step, the way forward begins to appear. Ask yourself this, is there something inside you calling, even softly? A dream you once set aside? A desire to help others? A quiet joy that comes when you write, share, teach, or heal? That could very well be a piece of your life's mission. So if you're feeling, even if only faintly, that you were born for something greater, let me tell you, congratulations. That's not a fantasy. That's your soul knocking at the door, inviting you into a new chapter. A chapter of service, of love, and of true meaning. Have you ever found yourself suddenly bursting into tears without knowing why? Or maybe there are days when you get unreasonably angry over something so small, even though a part of you knows it's not worth it. If this has been happening to you, don't rush to label yourself as weak or broken. The truth is, this is actually a natural part of spiritual awakening. I often remind my students and clients, tears are never meaningless. When you cry unexpectedly, you're not just crying for the moment, you're releasing pieces of yourself that have been suppressed for far too long. Childhood wounds, unhealed losses, even ancestral pain carried through generations in your bloodline. All of these can surface through tears. Remember this, energy never disappears, it only transforms. And as your heart begins to reprogram itself to vibrate at a higher frequency, it must first release the old, heavy energies you've been carrying. That's why your emotions may feel so intense. Joy so high it feels like you're flying. Sadness so deep it feels like you're sinking to the bottom. I once met a man in his 60s who shared something beautiful with me. One day he was watching a nature documentary. It showed a tiny bird leaving its nest for the very first time. Out of nowhere, he started sobbing like a child. He told me he had never allowed himself to cry his entire life. But in that moment, he realized he wasn't just crying about the bird. He was finally releasing decades of loneliness, the pain of always having to be the strong one, and all the emotions he had buried to survive. The most important thing is this: don't fight these emotional waves. Let them move through you. Just like a river carries away mud until its waters run clear, your tears and your anger are forms of cleansing. Think of it like a fever. Uncomfortable, yes, but the body's way of burning out what doesn't belong. Even science supports this truth. Tears help release stress hormones, and when anger is expressed in a safe and healthy way, it can actually help the body discharge built-up tension. Emotional outbursts aren't a sign of craziness. They are signs of healing. So ask yourself, am I holding on to a pain that has never been heard? And if the answer is yes, allow this awakening process to become the doorway to setting those wounded parts of yourself free. What you'll discover is this: each time the storm of emotion passes, your heart feels a little lighter, a little warmer. Over time, you'll notice that the chains of old wounds no longer bind you. Instead, your heart begins to vibrate on a new frequency, the frequency of compassion, empathy, and love. Have you ever woken up from a dream with this unshakable feeling inside, this is going to happen, and then, a few days later, it actually did? Or maybe you were driving one day when suddenly a thought popped into your head: take a different route. You listened, and only afterward realized you had avoided an accident or a problem. That's not coincidence. That's intuition. And during a spiritual awakening, both your intuition and your dreams often become so powerful that you can no longer dismiss them. I've walked alongside many people in midlife and even later years, and I've noticed a beautiful pattern. When the heart and mind begin to open, they start trusting that quiet inner whisper more deeply. Many have told me, I don't overanalyze everything anymore. I just listen to the feeling in my gut, and it's always right. Think of intuition as an inner compass that the universe placed within you. In the past, you may have ignored it, because society trains us to be rational, logical, realistic. But as you begin vibrating at a higher frequency, that compass shines brighter, guiding you toward the path your soul was always meant to walk. And what about dreams? Have you noticed they've become more vivid, more meaningful? They're no longer just random fragments of your subconscious, but almost like sacred letters sent from somewhere beyond. Some people dream of meeting a parent who has passed away, receiving comfort or guidance. Others dream of standing at a crossroads and upon waking suddenly know which choice to make. I remember one of my clients, a woman in her 50s. In a dream, she saw her old family home being flooded with water. Weeks later, she discovered a major plumbing issue in her own house. Because of that dream, she acted quickly and avoided serious damage. Even modern science has begun to study this mystery. Our brains are capable of processing information so subtly that they pick up signals long before the conscious mind notices them. Intuition is the language of this deeper intelligence, the brain working hand in hand with the soul, delivering a message as a gut feeling, or as a dream so real you can't ignore it. So let me ask you, how many times in your life have you known something ahead of time but ignored it, only to regret it later? And on the flip side, how many times did you follow your intuition and realize it saved you from a huge mistake? Spiritual awakening teaches you to honor intuition, not as something fuzzy or unreliable, but as a higher form of wisdom, the wisdom of your soul. The more you trust it, the stronger it becomes. The more you pay attention to your dreams, the clearer the guidance becomes. And perhaps one day you'll come to see something profound. You have never been alone on this journey. There has always been an unseen hand, through intuition, through dreams, gently guiding you every step of the way. Have you ever felt like time just doesn't flow the way it used to? Maybe you're catching up with an old friend, and hours pass by, but to you, it feels like only a few minutes. Then, in other moments, just 10 minutes can drag on endlessly, stretching out like an entire hour. Many people I've spoken with on their spiritual awakening journey have shared a similar experience, the dissolving of time. Time stops feeling linear, like the ticking hands of a clock. Instead, it bends, stretches, and warps in mysterious ways. And this isn't just your imagination. It's actually a sign that you're stepping into a deeper awareness, a more multidimensional way of experiencing life. Over the years, I've heard countless stories from students and clients A woman in her 60s once told me, "Every time I meditate, I close my eyes, and when I open them, an entire hour has passed, but inside it feels like just a few minutes of silence." On the other hand, someone else shared, "When I'm trapped in anxiety, 5 minutes feels like an eternity." Science and spirituality both back this up. Neuroscience has shown that our perception of time is directly linked to our state of consciousness. When your mind is relaxed, or when you're deeply immersed in creativity, meditation, or love, your brain releases chemicals that literally shift how you experience time. From a spiritual perspective, time itself is not fixed. Linear time is simply a tool we use to navigate human life, but the soul exists in what's often called timelessness. Think back to a moment in your own life, maybe a breathtaking sunset, a time when you were watching your child play, or a heartfelt conversation that lit you up inside. In those moments, you weren't counting seconds or hours. Time seemed to stand still, and you were simply present. That's the universe's way of whispering to you. The true nature of time is far different from what we've been taught. As you awaken spiritually, and as you loosen the grip of ego and fear, you begin to taste this freedom more often. You realize you can live outside of time. You start to sense past, present, and future, not as separate, but as layers of the same eternal now. I know it might sound abstract, but let me ask you, have you ever had a strong gut feeling about something that was about to happen, as if it had already happened somewhere, somehow? Or maybe you've met someone for the first time, but felt an instant, deep familiarity, like you'd known them before. These are little cracks in the illusion of linear time, giving you glimpses of the multidimensional truth your soul has always known. So if lately you've noticed time speeding up in strange ways, or slowing down until it feels unbearable, don't panic. See it as a reminder that you're syncing with a higher frequency, one where time no longer rules you. Instead, it becomes a gentle current that carries you along, giving you space to experience, live, to learn, and to grow. You don't have to race against time anymore. Instead, you're learning to flow with it, and that is one of the most sacred signs of spiritual awakening. Have you ever noticed that once you step onto the path of awakening, loud parties and crowded gatherings start to feel foreign? There was a time when laughter in noisy rooms, quick dates, or casual social meetups felt exciting, but now it's as if your heart no longer craves those things. Instead, you begin to long for quiet. You want to spend more time alone, not out of loneliness, but because solitude has become a kind of teacher, a gentle friend who helps you see more clearly into your own soul. And more than anything, you start to feel drawn back to nature. Picture this. An early morning, you step into your garden barefoot, feeling the damp earth still kissed by dew. Birds are singing, the first rays of sunlight slip through the leaves. In that moment, you don't need anyone else beside you. Nature itself becomes a mirror, reflecting back the deep stillness already living inside you. I once worked with a woman in her 50s who shared something beautiful with me. She said, "I used to believe I needed to travel the world, meet new people, and stay busy to feel like my life had meaning. But now, just sitting by the lake in the afternoon, watching the fish swim, I feel more peace than I ever have." Tears filled her eyes as she realized that the peace she had been chasing for so long was never out there. It had always been waiting inside her, revealed through a simple connection with nature and herself. Science actually backs this up. Just 20 minutes walking in a park or forest can lower stress hormones, regulate your heart rate, and boost your immune system. But beyond the physical benefits, something even deeper happens. When you allow yourself to truly be with nature, you stop feeling like a separate individual. You begin to sense that you are part of something greater, something whole. Maybe that's why so many people in this stage of awakening start planting gardens, going for solo walks, or even moving closer to the forest or mountains. They're not running away from the world, they're returning to the natural rhythm of their soul. So if you find yourself losing interest in crowded places, don't judge yourself for being distant or antisocial. Instead, see it as the universe inviting you into a new chapter, a journey of finding power in stillness and strength in solitude. And here's the most profound part. Within that silence, you'll discover you were never truly alone. Because when you sit under a tree or gaze up at the drifting clouds, you are already connected to millions of other heartbeats of life. You and nature, you and the universe, you were never separate. Have you ever been driving down the highway only to glance at the license plate in front of you and see the numbers 101 or 444 and suddenly feel this strange sensation, almost as if the universe itself is whispering to you? Or maybe you're flipping through radio stations and out of nowhere a song begins to play, its lyrics speaking directly to your heart, answering a question you were just carrying inside. That's not random coincidence. On the journey of awakening, you begin to receive mysterious messages and signs, what I like to call activation codes, sent by the universe to remind you, you are never walking this path alone. I remember a woman once shared her story with me. She had lost her husband after more than 30 years together. In her darkest days of grief, she told me, "Every time I saw a yellow butterfly flutter past my window, I felt like it was him, as if he was telling me, 'I'm still here, you're not alone.'" And strangely enough, that butterfly seemed to appear most often on the days when she was feeling the most hopeless. Psychology studies suggest that when our awareness expands, the brain and the heart begin to sync at a higher frequency. In that state, we become more sensitive to subtle signals, things other people might easily overlook, but for us, they carry deep meaning. Maybe you've had the same dream repeating over and over. Maybe you've felt the presence of someone in the room, not in a frightening way, but as if you're being supported, held, surrounded with care. Or perhaps a single feather lands right in front of you, just moments after you've silently asked the universe for reassurance. Think of it this way. The universe is like a loving parent, always finding gentle ways to comfort its child with little signs and reminders. And the more you pay attention, the more you'll notice these messages showing up everywhere, through numbers, through songs, through dreams, or even in a passing comment from a complete stranger. The key isn't to decode them with some rigid formula, but to listen with your intuition. If you see a repeating number, and in that moment you feel calm, reassured, or lifted, then that is the message meant for you. If a song moves you to tears and you can't explain why, maybe it's a reminder that your heart is asking you to open up to your emotions. So start noticing the little signals around you. See them as activation codes, sacred nudges sent to awaken the deepest layers of your soul. And one day, you'll come to realize something profound. You were never truly lost. Every step you've taken has been guided by an unseen hand. Every moment has been touched by a quiet whisper leading you forward. Maybe you've felt this before. The things that once thrilled you, landing a big paycheck, getting a new title, receiving praise from others, just don't touch your heart the way they used to. You begin to realize that all those pursuits are like endless human games, a game with no finish line. The more you chase, the more exhausted you feel, because there will always be someone richer, more powerful, more celebrated, and you find yourself asking, so what exactly am I running for? I once worked with a client, a highly successful businessman. For 30 years, he built his company bigger, bought more houses, collected luxury cars. But one morning, as he sat in his grand mansion, staring at the shimmering blue pool, an unfamiliar emptiness washed over him. It wasn't that he wasn't grateful, but everything he had suddenly felt flat. He said to me, "I realized I'd spent my whole life playing a game that never once brought me true peace." And I believe many of you listening have had similar moments of awakening. Maybe you've spent years chasing recognition, working yourself to the bone just to be called successful. But eventually your soul begins to whisper, "I don't care about those trophies anymore. I need something that truly matters." What your soul is seeking might be peace. It might be the joy of sitting in nature, the warmth of an honest conversation with a friend, or simply living a life that feels whole, without needing to prove anything to anyone. Modern science even backs this up. As people age, the brain naturally shifts. The regions tied to competition quiet down, while the areas connected to compassion and human connection light up stronger. That's why so many people in midlife and beyond start turning toward peace, love, and meaning rather than status or titles. So I want to ask you this. If tomorrow were your last day on Earth, what would still matter? Money, fame, or the memories and love you leave behind in the hearts of others. When you awaken, you stop getting trapped in society's endless races. You start choosing to live by the rhythm of your soul, slower, deeper, more authentic. And in that surrender, you discover a kind of freedom that no amount of money or status could ever buy. See, the path of awakening isn't about running away from life. It's about seeing through it clearly, so you can choose to live differently, to live more truthfully with yourself. And if you're listening to these words right now, maybe you've already stepped onto that path. Before I wrap up, I want to invite you to do something small. If what I've shared today resonates with you, please hit like, leave a comment with your own experience, and subscribe so I can continue walking with you on this spiritual journey. Because who knows, your story might just be the light that guides someone else out there, someone searching, someone lost, just like you once were. You are not alone. We are awakening together. And this journey is only just beginning.